The reason they like reading my stuff is that I've always got real life examples to prove what I'm saying.
There's a lot of good people that listen to this podcast.
Other than God and my family, deer hunting would be next in line on my list of priorities.
From the bottom of our hearts, it's just fantastic and awesome to have the support that you guys are getting.
People ask me about expandable broadheads and love swings.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 180. And I'm live from Destin, Florida, so I apologize before we get this thing undergoing if my audio and video is not that great. I'm sitting on a balcony trying to get close to a Wi-Fi router. Don, you're at home. How's it been going this week?
It's been fantastic. During the day, I had a crew here building a new pole building for me. Actually, listeners of Chasing Giants, Amish crew out of northwestern Ohio, and they were here for 3 days, but in the evenings I've been slipping out trying to lay eyes on Babe or velvet bucks. And
so the Whitetail Master Academy folks have already gotten this update, but the podcast listeners have not. Give us an update here of what you know so far.
Well, I've got two pictures of him probably 10 days ago or so, and he was facing the camera, directly at the camera, so you really couldn't see. His rack was not turned at all for you to see what was there. I do know he has at least 2 extra points that he didn't have last year. Does not appear to be quite as wide as last year, but he definitely is heavier, more mass. That's about, at this point, all I can say for sure. Now, there was one evening this week, I think I might have seen him right before dark. I was glassing this field that had been in wheat. Now it's in double crop soybeans. And there was a bachelor group of bucks out, and it was real close to where I got his photo. And there was 5 bucks in that bunch, and 2 of them were good ones. But I was a full, probably 3/8 of a mile from these bucks. And it was getting dark. I'm looking through binoculars, and I could just see that 2 of them had big frames, and that's about all I could tell. Don't know for sure. I think one of them was probably him. I've been back to that field a couple of times and have not laid eyes on him, although I've seen bucks every time I've been there. I've not seen him, or actually I've not seen a big mature buck on that field, other than that one night right before dark. So I'm going to hit it hard this coming week. I got a bunch of cameras to check. Some of them have never been checked at all yet, and be hitting the fields every evening to hopefully lay eyes on him, maybe get some video footage.
Yeah, one of the things we just talked about before we went on air today is an upcoming episode where we want to talk about not only the target bucks on our property, but like you said, you've done all this work to take your property to the next level with habitat. Now let's take it to the next level with buck management. So I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody right now, we have this episode coming up in a couple weeks where it's going to be about buck management on your properties. So Don's going to get into this specifically on his property and what he's thinking based on the inventory he pulls over the next couple weeks. So if you have questions about that, make sure you get them submitted, and maybe we can even answer those kind of questions all on one episode as it talks about target lists and buck management. So I'm excited about that. But I'm excited you got to see Babe. I mean, the big part is he's there.
Oh, he's alive. It's definitely him in the photo. The interesting thing was he's following that annual pattern. Last year, I think the date was July 14th this year when I got his first picture. And last year I got his first picture on July 15th, just one day off. Where I got the pictures is really the very same spot. It was within about 30 yards of the same spot. So, but he hadn't been there all summer until then, because I've had the camera there all along. And then he shows up same as last year. So he's following that annual pattern. And then what he did last year was he's not really on my property. He's kind of, just off of it. But as the summer went on, you get into August, he showed up on my place a couple of times. And then by the time he sheds velvet, he's on my place, pretty regular. So he's following the pattern in years past. So I'm expecting he'll do the same this year.
I'm curious. I've never asked you this question, but the year that you got video footage of Mel with the fork time buck, there was other younger bucks in that bachelor group in that field, which is the same area that this buck is at. Have you gone back and looked at footage to see if any of those younger bucks, the year before you shot Mel, it would have been the year we passed Mel, and you killed the fork time buck, if any of those could have been babe back then? Have you gone back and looked at that yet?
I haven't. That's a great question. Now, as soon as I get off this podcast, you know what I'm going to be doing.
But wasn't there some video footage that you had of the fork time buck, and Mel was Mel would have been 3.5 that year. I think there was at least 2 younger bucks in that bachelor group then. So I'd be curious to see if he shifted to another range or he was in that bachelor group, as that would have been him being a 2-year-old then.
Yeah, that would have been 2019. He's 6.5 this year, 2023. So yeah, he would have been 2.5. I never thought about that. I don't know what I'm doing. As soon as this podcast is over, I'm pulling up old video footage.
You got quite a bit of video footage, I think, for a couple different nights that you were down there videoing.
Yep, I do.
Because I think what you were doing then was you were just slipping down there in the Quiet Cat and then walking through the corn and popping out on the edge of the bean field, weren't you? Wasn't that where you were doing to get in there?
That's exactly what I was doing. Yep.
So yeah, you'll have to update us next week if you find that, or post it on social media. That'll be interesting if you could figure out and find it. That frame, we knew that deer as a 4.5-year-old. We saw him quite a bit, but if you had video footage of him as 3, that'd be another piece of the story that you might not even realize you had.
Well, I do. I know I've got video footage at 3 in Hardhorn.
Right.
I don't know that I'll have to go back and look at that velvet footage.
But for annual pattern, it'd be pretty cool to say that he did the same thing from a 3.5-year-old to a 6.5-year-old with the same bachelor group.
Right.
So, yeah. All right. Well, we'll stay tuned for that. We're getting ready to take a break and go listen to a spot from Osseo. I got to ask, for the people who are watching on YouTube, you got your Osseo shirt on, but then your Make America Great Again hat. What was the selection of hat choice tonight for?
Well, before we was recording, I was on YouTube watching some current news videos, and I was watching a Trump rally, and I was getting fired up. They're coming after him with all they got. They're just deathly afraid this guy's going to be the next president. And I'll tell you what, the next year is just going to be incredibly interesting, because I'm telling you, first of all, they're going to do everything they possibly can to stop Trump from winning. But I don't see any way possible they can do it legit. I mean, there's just too many supporters. But if he does win, if, the election is not stolen again, and he does win, I do not believe for a second that the Democrats are just going to step aside and let him come into the White House like he did for Biden. I think there's going to be an absolute revolution in this country in the next 18 months. Just my prediction.
Well, I got a prediction for you, and all of the listeners can hold me accountable to my prediction and tell me that I'm an idiot. My prediction on this, and this is from an economic standpoint, the current administration is going to keep gas prices low. We will not see another spike in high gas prices before the next election. and the Fed is going to artificially keep the interest rates. They should raise the interest rates a whole lot higher than they are now. But if the conservatives end up losing this election, as soon as that election's over, you are going to see the reverse C curve of inflation, and we're going to be in extreme high interest rates and extreme high fuel prices as soon as it's over. But they will not give that as an excuse for people to want to vote for a conservative because of all of this affecting consumer behavior. So I think house prices, interest rates, and all are going to go up a little bit, but we're not going to see the 1980s double-digit mortgage rates until after this election. So that's my economic prediction, is they're going to artificially hold this stuff and manipulate it, control it, try to keep consumer behavior as positive as they can, unemployment as low as they can, so that the economic factor will not be part of this presidential debate. That's my opinion.
I think that's a pretty fair guess. I mean, they're going to do everything they can to make themselves look good and him look bad. But then once the election's over, well, I'm just curious what the Republicans are going to do. They know they got hosed last time. So what are they going to do?
Well, for all the people that hate us talking about politics, we got it out of the way in the first 10 minutes of this episode. So we're going to take a quick break and listen to a spot from our friends at Osseo Gear.
Osseo Gear introduces a premium line of bow hunting gear that is unmatched, pairing nature's finest camouflage with the best technological innovations. Osseo Gear brings whitetail bow hunters the gear they need to be the best at their craft. The unique camouflage mimics the intricate feather pattern of North America's greatest predatory creatures. Designed for invisibility, built for comfort, and engineered for function. Visit OsseoGear.com. That's ASIO Gear.com to start shopping. Osseo Gear, prepare to be invisible.
All right, well, welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit about, actually, the 6 questions that you chose today are going to take up quite a bit of time, and they're really diverse questions with a lot of different topics. So we're going to leave time for that. But I figured I better go ahead and show all the listeners what we're looking at behind me. Can you see all them lights back there?
Yep, absolutely.
That is the fishing fleet of Destin, Florida, the hub of most of the commercial fishing, at least charter fishing, for the Gulf of Mexico. So for those who didn't realize or didn't listen to the last podcast, our good friend Austin Razor and I flew down here to do 3 days of offshore fishing, and we finished up our 3rd day today and absolutely killed it. We had the best time, and couldn't have asked for better weather. You would have even enjoyed it, Don. The ocean was like a swimming pool flat. It didn't even rock the boat. It was like you were just out on actually Lake Sullivan would probably be even choppier than what it was out in the middle of the ocean today.
Well, I'll stay home. I don't like the water. The older I get, the less I like it. I don't even like driving across bridges anymore. I never learned how to swim, and don't want nothing to do with the water.
The big news down here is there's been a whale shark off the shore, and a whale shark is actually bigger than most boats. So a bunch of people, I think one of our podcast listeners who is friends with me on Instagram actually sent me a private message today. He's down here fishing. He got video of it. So I haven't seen his video, but evidently this thing we saw some other posts of how big it is. And, you know, these normal little center console boats, it's bigger than the entire boat. So you talk about Jonah and the whale type fish. That's what this thing is. Now, luckily we've been on really, really big boats. So Patrick Simpson was down here earlier in the week and fished with us the first day. But couldn't ask for a better trip. So I guess I can go ahead and tell you too, there's going to be some videos of these fishing trips over on the Chasing Giants TV channel on YouTube that if you're interested, go watch them. But it's more about us having fun and showcasing these small businesses. You know, you and I talked about the vision of this TV channel, and it's going to continue to morph But when we find good people that are working hard to chase their passion, whether it's deer hunting or in this case, offshore fishing, I think it's a great story to tell. And the guy that we fished with the last 2 days is from Alabama, and his family owned a chain of grocery stores, and he's trying to diversify, and he bought a charter boat and has a crew running it. And it's just a cool story. I mean, it's a guy doing what we're doing and what everybody else is doing, and that's just chasing their dreams and working their tail off to do it. So you're going to get to see some of that over on the YouTube channel. The first day we hunted was with a boat called 100 Proof, and they're all crazy deer hunters, and you put them and Patrick Simpson on a boat together for 10 hours, and I think they spent more time looking at trail camera pictures than they did fishing at one point. But great group of guys, and I think they listen to the podcast some, so want to thank all of them. But yeah, it's been a really good trip. It was nice to get away for a few days.
Yeah, it looked like I've been following along with your videos and social media posts, and it looks like you guys have had quite the haul. I hope you got that Victory Chevrolet or Victory GMC loaded down with coolers in the back, because you're going to need them.
We should have drove it. We actually flew. We found flights for about $100. So I'm shipping all of the fish back. They freeze it down here and they'll ship it to you. So I haven't seen what that bill's going to be yet. So I'm worried that it's going to be as much as the charter boat, but we'll see. But
all that money you saved flying, you're going to eat it up on the shipping.
You got that right. But, the best part about it is, Austin Razor's sitting out here on the patio with me. I got him on camera at least 6 times, and you know how he hates being on camera.
Oh, I seen them white legs. I think I could give him a run for his money on white legs, though.
Hey, that should be a new charity event that we do, is to do a guess on who has whiter legs, you or Austin Razor, because I think just because of this fishing trip, I've seen him in shorts one more time than I've seen you in it, because I've never seen you in shorts.
I would win that contest hands down, because he's had his shorts on here in the last couple of days. I don't think I've had shorts on for outside anyway for a decade anyway. So
I think when I've shared a hotel room with you, I think you sleep in blue jeans, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but if I was out there tonight on that harbor, you would see my legs shining as bright as those lights on them boats.
Yeah, that's funny. Real quick update though, the Chasing Giant. Thank you guys who have gone over and subscribed to my gibberish and poorly edited videos with bad audio. I hope you guys are liking the content. It's just a completely different spinoff. In just 1 week, we have over 700 subscribers to that. So we're going to be able to hit that YouTube algorithm shortly as we start getting more followers and more views. So the more that you guys can spread the word and share that, the better. The other big news is that I announced, and I put the link in the description below, is we've came up with a Chasing Giants Pro Staff shirt. Hey, Austin, run in there and grab yours real quick. I have a deckhand here with me that can run in and grab his, but I'm wearing one now.
Before he comes back.
Don said to put pants on if you're going to get on camera. Yeah, Austin ran in to get his. I think he wore his fishing, so it's probably smelly. Nobody's going to be able to see it. But the cool thing on the back of it is, can you see that, Don?
Yeah, pick it up just a little.
I'll share a screen with the logo on it, but I wanted to read it here. So we put a spin. I ran this idea by Don some time ago, and we wanted to start a different kind of pro staff. And it's not pro staff meaning promotional. It's what we believe in, what we live by. So the text on the front of this thing, it's got a big Chasing Giants on the front, and on the back, and it says pro staff, and it says pro God, pro Jesus, pro life, pro family, pro guns, pro freedom, pro country, pro military, pro law enforcement, and pro chasing giant bucks. So if you guys are interested in that, the cool thing about this shirt is we're not going to take any money from this thing. The website you can go to buy this shirt is Curry Inc. CurryInc.com. This is a small business. I actually did a video on them The cool part about it is this and other Lester's Feet apparel, all proceeds are going to go to the foundation. So we don't make a dime off of this. That's not what it's for. It's about to let all of our listeners make a statement about what they believe in and be part of this family, but also help us raise money for the foundation. We got youth sizes, and then extra, as our deckhand on Thursday said, he's not big, he's just big and sexy. So we got big and sexy sizes for the bigger boys and even down to kids. And we also added some Lester's Feet apparel for the lady folk who want to get something and try to support the podcast and Lester's Feet. So go to Curry Inc. It's a pre-sale. So when you order the shirt, it's $25. They're going to make, I think it's from now until I believe around August 15th or 18th, we're going to sell them. And then we'll ship them right around the end of the month. So it's going to take a couple weeks to get them to you, but that's the only way we could do it and sell them at a cheap enough price with free shipping. So $25 includes shipping, and all the profit goes to the foundation. So there'll be a link below about the shirts specifically and the company that's making it. Again, another small business. We want to do this, help people as much as we can with this platform. So with that, Don, if it's all right, let's, do you got anything else to talk about before our first question?
Nope. We better get to moving on to those questions because there's 6 of them and a couple of them might take a little bit of discussion to get through them. So
I'm going to flip onto it right now.
Okay. The first one comes from Ed Hunter from Byron, Michigan. He says, hello, Don and Terry. First and foremost, I would like to say thank you for everything that you guys do for Lester's Feet and the hunting community. I am new to food plots and do not have access to any equipment in my area. My father and I currently use a walk-behind tiller to work the ground for us. We get our soil test done and try and fertilize accordingly, but our plots just do not seem to do very well. Can you think of anything we could do to maximize the growth of our plots? Something popped up there on your screen that's covering this, Terry.
Sorry.
That's all right. It says, my second question pertains to the rut. Do you think it is possible for the older mature bucks to know when those older mature does that they have bred before come into heat, and would they possibly follow them around when the time comes? Once again, thank you for all you guys do. God bless and good luck this season. Ed, in regards to your plots not doing well, there could be a lot of different factors, but my guess is you're talking really small plots. The fact that you're, using a tiller, and so I'm going to guess they're probably quarter acre in size. I doubt if they're even a full half acre, really, if they were measured. My best guess is there's some competition from trees and things like that are sucking the moisture away. And the interesting thing is that at Real World we get the question all the time, what seed blend do you guys recommend for a shaded area? Well, plants need sunlight, and nobody would ever call us or send us a question and say, what seed blend do you recommend for a plot that doesn't get any water? Plants need water, they need sunlight, and you take either one away and they're not going to do good at all. So my best guess, just based on the limited information I have without actually seeing the plots, is that you've got a lot of competition from other vegetation around the edge of those plots, trees, bushes, whatever. And they're, sucking away a lot of the moisture more than anything, and probably also sunlight to some degree. So that's just my best guess. Now, your question on the rut, and, a mature buck, he's bred a doe in the past, and will he know when that doe is going to come in heat the following year? Because as we've talked about on this podcast before, a lot of times those does are almost on an annual cycle like the bucks are in their travel patterns, where if that doe comes into heat, say November 15th, in following years, there's a very good chance that particular doe is going to come into heat within 24 hours of November 15th. And would a buck recognize that? And to be honest, I don't think so. That's just my best guess. Now, what I do think will happen is that mature buck will remember exactly where he's found hot does in the past, and he will check those areas out But to think that a wild animal can remember the date when he found a hot doe previously, I think that might be stretching it just a little. I could be wrong, there's really no way to tell, but my best guess is he just remembers where he's found hot does in the past, and those are the areas he's going to check out every year that he's alive for the rest of his life.
Yeah, you've written a couple articles just to tee this up to spin this conversation to what you do believe. I think the question is really geared toward how can we use the rut and a mature buck breeding a doe as part of the pattern. What you have written about is, I believe it's called homecoming bucks, which right before the rut goes into full swing, before all the does come into heat, that buck will make a run back to either where he was born or his bachelor group area. And, and it's consistent that he runs back. And then after the does can start to wean off of being in heat, he might run again. So for the people who haven't followed your articles that might spin this question a different way on how we can pattern mature bucks around the rut, talk about the theory of homecoming bucks. It's not exactly what he asked about, but it's along the same guideline.
Yeah, so I noticed a pattern several years ago of mature bucks, and I figured this out on my trail cameras from having so many cameras out and watching so many bucks over the years, that there is a pattern in the fall when a buck disperses to his fall range. He spends his summer in a bachelor group and he's got a summer range, and then he's got a totally separate fall winter range. And so he moves off there before the rut. Most of the time it's in September. Sometimes it'll be later, like in October, but it's always before the rut. He gets into his fall range. And what I've noticed is there's a very specific time when some mature bucks will run back to where they summered. And that specific time is around November 7th. So there's more booners killed November 7th than any other date. That's the date right before a lot of the does are coming into heat, and the bucks have built themselves up to a feverish pitch, and they're ready for the rut to get going, and they're on their feet a whole lot more. So more booners are killed November 7th and 8th than any other dates. Well,
just because they're covering more ground and going past more tree stands.
Yep. And that is the same dates when I see these bucks run back to where they summered. And my theory is, and I can't think of any other reason, is that buck is desperately searching for hot does, and he cannot find one yet in his fall range. So out of desperation, he runs back to an area he's very familiar with. He's not going into strange territory. He's running back to where he summered. And when he does, he's usually there less than 24 hours. He's just there to make the round, see if he can find a hot doe. And then sometimes it just happens overnight. And a buck, when it gets dark, he runs back to wherever he summered. And when the sun's up, he's clear back to his fall range again. And I have never seen a situation where I got that buck's picture, more than 24 hours apart. I might get his picture twice, but it's 12 hours apart or something. He only runs back for about a day. So what's that mean to the deer hunter? Well, if you're getting pictures right now in the summertime of a good buck, and then he's a buck that relocates to a different fall range, it's not where you hunt, not on the property you own or whatever, there is a chance, and it doesn't happen with every buck, but it does happen with a certain percentage of mature bucks. There is a chance that buck is going to run back to that summer range during hunting season. And if he does, you can mark it on your calendar. It's going to be November 7th or 8th. I mean, I have never seen it any date except those two dates.
Yeah.
The other thing that happens at the end of the rut, he's in his fall range, he's breeding does, chasing does, searching for does in his fall range. At the very tail end of the rut, there around Thanksgiving weekend, those hot does become harder to find. He spends more time searching between each hot doe. And as he gets desperate again, he will do that same thing. He will run back to his summer range. Now, at this point, you can't put a date on it. I say Thanksgiving weekend, that last weekend in November, but that's about as good as you can do. So that's one pattern that I've seen with mature bucks, over during the rut, and I've seen it multiple times over multiple years with multiple bucks. I call it homecoming bucks because it's like they run home to see if they can find a girlfriend on that range where they summer, and then they run right back to their fall range.
Yep. And then before we move on to the next question, the first part of his question was about food plots and small plots. Your answer was kind of making the assumption that there's trees there. And one of the lessons Dwayne Hopkins always talks to people about is what you see is the diameter of the canopy of a tree is what's underneath the ground with the root ball. So as wide as that tree is up top, that's how wide the root ball is going to be competing with moisture. But that's making the assumption that these guys are planting it near trees. It could also be a browse problem. And the only way to know that is a utilization cage. So before we move on to the next question, just talk a little bit about a utilization cage and what that can show us if we're not having plots that keep up with browse.
Yeah, utilization cage is simply a ring made with fencing, and that ring should be about 3 foot around or diameter. You just want to stake it out in your plot. And what it'll do is it'll prevent the deer from browsing whatever's growing in that cage. And you can compare the vegetation within that cage or that ring with the vegetation in the rest of the plot. And that'll tell you exactly how much the deer are browsing.
Yep. So maybe one of those two is the issue that they're not, either competition with trees or probably a browse problem.
Buyafarm.com is your source for farm, recreational properties, rural homes, and more. Now, here is Don Higgins with this week's featured property.
Well, welcome to this week's Buy a Farm segment. I have Don Bailey on the line, and Don has a property in Randolph County, Illinois, and this property's 74 acres. I believe it's going to be on auction. Don, tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, it's 74 acres near Chester, Illinois, in Randolph County. It has a home on it, a nice pond, extremely well-kept home. On the back side of it, Terry, has got some really amazing outcropping of rocks, 40 to 60 foot wide creek bed with gravel and rocks on it.
Yeah.
And there's rock croppings all the way over it. Like I said, it's an extremely well-made home. It's got some outbuildings. The 70 acres, basically, that are tillable, a person could put that in CRP, and he would have the deer in that area locked in.
Yeah, so right now when you look at the aerials, and I'm going to be sharing some for the folks watching on YouTube, but when you look at the aerials, basically you have this house that's up by the front, overlooking just a gorgeous pond up by the road. And then you have a big field with perimeter, and I'm guessing most of that perimeter around the back is this creek that there's so many pictures of online. And,
Yeah.
some big-looking cave-type holes in this thing, but beautiful, beautiful property. But I'm like you, if somebody wanted to start with a clean slate and make a deer hunter's paradise with a small acreage, you have this whole big row crop field that either could be leased or to get income off of, or you could put it in program and set up different food plots, structure, different beddings and access points. This could be pretty much a clean slate for somebody who wanted to start a deer hunting mecca out in the middle of nowhere, because I really like not only how this property lays, but I like the surrounding area around it with the connecting woods. I think you could really hold a lot of deer on this piece.
Yes, and it's literally on a dead-end road. The road runs past it about a quarter of a mile, and then that's it. There's one of the farmstead down there, an elderly gentleman, and that's it. I mean, you have the top end of privacy.
Right. So you said that this property is going to be on an auction. So explain the dates of the auction, and if somebody wants to learn more, is there can they visit by appointment or whatever?
Yes. The bidding closes August the 31st at 8 p.m. Bidding opens 2 weeks before August 31st. And yes, if anyone wants to look at it, just give me a call, send me a text or email, and be glad to set up something to look it over. Yep. It's got everything. Sound like a salesman, which I am, but it's got everything going for it, Terry. It's not it's a conglomerate home. It's a real nice home. They can look at the pictures. It's got a sunroom, a fireplace, nice garage. The outbuildings, the guy that owns it was in the middle of rehabbing them. They need some work to finish them up, but there's some nice buildings that just need siding and stuff like that.
Even the timber on it, which is around the back of the property, I like how you always hang your hat on the tree to give a size perspective, because pictures can be really misleading sometimes, and there's some pictures on there, good sized timber for the area of woods, with a good creek through it. So I'm sure that it's already good deer hunting, based on the property. But I think with what's there, if somebody wanted it as a homestead, that would be great. If somebody wanted it as a hunting cabin, a group of people from out of state that wanted to come in and have a place to store their equipment and be able to stay on the property, with the two different sections of woods, you could hold multiple hunters very easily on this. And like I said, the thing I love about some of the properties that BioFarm brings us is some of these you could just start from a clean slate. And
that is, you're not following anybody else goofs up. Get someone with knowledge like you guys and Don Higgins and what I need to do here, and you can get it right from the get-go instead of, like I said, following someone else's blunders.
The redneck in me says you can fish from your front porch and hunt from your back porch. That's pretty much all you need, isn't it?
That's it. And they're going to send me some pictures. There's a tremendous amount of fish in that pond.
Fantastic.
Their grandkids just catch the snot out of them. So,
and you never know with these auctions. Todd Hewing was on here a couple weeks ago talking about an auction, and he said that he had a feeling that it could go really cheap, and sure enough, it went cheap. So, the only way that is to participate in the auction and be ready. And to do that, make sure you get a hold of Don Bailey ahead of time. Go to the biofarm.com webpage and search under Randolph County, 74 plus minus acres. A great little looking home. I think it could serve as either one, somebody who wanted to move out to the country or somebody that wanted a deer camp. I think it could turn into a very nice place for either goal.
And if anyone wants to talk about it, my direct phone line number is 618-919-1031, like the tax exchange, 1031. Or they can text me or email me at dbailey@biofarm.com.
Yep. Bidding opens August 24th, closes August 31st. So make sure you get a hold of Don if you want to learn more information on this or other biofarm.com properties that we feature on the podcast. Don, thanks so much for having us. I'm looking forward to see what this property goes for.
Well, thank you, sir. You guys have a good evening.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, the next one comes from Brandon Williams from Peru, Indiana. He says, Don and Terry, I love the podcast and have used and loved Real World products for 13 years. The podcast has been amazing, and I love being a member of the online Whitetail Master Academy. I'm just wondering why you guys continue to use liberal YouTube when there are other options. I'm not by any means tech savvy, but I will always support a conservative company over any liberal company when I have an opportunity. Plus, supporting conservative companies will guide more of your listeners to good companies. I've heard you guys mention being kicked off YouTube multiple times, but continue to support it when there are other options out there. For instance, Rumble instead. Thank you. Well, Brandon, that is a great question, and it's probably the perfect episode for us to ask or to answer that question, because this episode is probably going to get flagged by YouTube for what I said about the elections being stolen.
Probably.
So Anyway, we have our podcast on multiple platforms, not just YouTube.
A
The
very small
Whitetail Master.
percentage of a very small percentage of our listeners actually watch on YouTube. It's probably the lowest media that we even are on. Most of our media is podcast platforms.
Exactly. So it's just a platform that so many people use. We feel that we need to be there, just so people can find us. Now, we've also just recently added the podcast to the Whitetail Master Academy website. You can go there. You don't have to pay to subscribe. You can watch it for free on that website. There's also several other videos on that website that are free that don't require you to pay a subscription. So if you don't like YouTube, but yet you want to see a video version, you can go to the Whitetail Master Academy website and watch it there. But I get exactly what you're talking about. I just can't stand supporting liberal companies. And there is a number of them that there really is not a good alternative. And I'm not going to get into naming them off, but I wish that more conservative businesses were out there to compete with some of these liberal giant companies. I think it's a great thing what we're seeing, with things like Bud Light, the CMT, and the Jason and Aldean song. Try that in a small town. Yeah, I think that there's a movement that goes along with exactly what you described as supporting conservative companies and not liberal companies. I think the public is slowly waking up. I was there years ago. I'm telling you, if people would, if I could get the entire population to follow my lead, there would be nothing like the NFL. I would put them people right out of business today. And basically, and the bad thing about it is there's so many of these professional athletes that are great people. They use their platform for a lot of good, but it's the organization, the NFL itself, who has become so woke. And it's not just the NFL, Major League Baseball. I think it was every team except the Texas Rangers had some kind of pride day where the freaks got to come in and put on a show. You probably remember the Dodgers allowed these clowns to come in and dressed up like nuns, and I don't know, just I'm going to get on a real rant here, Terry. The NBA,
Why don't we
league.
just say this? Don and I, neither one are tech savvy either. So everybody thinks that we have this huge support crew behind this. This is basically just me and Don. And we're not that talented when it comes to tech stuff, but we'll take your advice and at least look in. You're not the first person that's talked about Rumble, but that's part of the reason that the Whitetail Master Academy was started. And there's two layers to it, so people don't have to think that you have to pay to go there and watch stuff. If YouTube goes away, if Facebook goes away, we wanted a way to connect the brands to everyone else. Outdoors with the Morgans YouTube channel did the same thing. And that's just to have another platform that we can maintain that connection. So, there's still stuff there that you can watch, including this podcast. If for some reason YouTube goes away or takes down our episode or whatever, but we'll check into the Rumble thing. As Chasing Giants TV grows, as the Higgins Outdoors grows, as everything else, bring those to our attention. We are not the people on the front end that know all this stuff. So thanks for bringing it to our attention. We'll go on to the next question though, or else we're going to get really far behind as Don gets on another rant. You shouldn't have watched that rally before this podcast. It done got you all.
It got me fired up. Well,
got you wild and woolly.
This is one episode that's probably going to get banned from YouTube, but
it's not going to get banned. The thing about it is we don't monetize it, so they just let it go. It might get suppressed, but it's not going to get banned.
Next question. Ryan Ayers from Jacksboro, Tennessee says, "Hey, Don and Terry, good luck on your 2023 season. My question is, have you ever heard the statement, there's no such thing as a nocturnal buck? I just happened to read something about it online And they said the reason there's no nocturnal buck is because a deer has to eat 8% of its body weight every day, then it must lay down to process food, causing them to feed multiple times in a 24-hour period. So when called nocturnal, they're moving but not far from their bedrooms. Is there any truth to this? I was just hoping you could tell us facts or fiction. Thanks and God bless. Ryan, this is absolute garbage. So a buck eats 8% of his body weight a day. Now let's suppose this buck weighs 250 pounds. That means he eats 20 pounds of food a day. Total absolute nonsense garbage. It's being promoted by people that don't have a clue what they're talking about. This is another example of, and I've heard it myself, from various places, magazines, videos, blogs, you name it. People have promoted this idea that a buck has to eat X number of times a day. I had captive deer for 25 years, and I'm telling you that I never once seen a deer get up and eat 8 times a day. They would eat about twice a day, to be honest, the evening and more early morning, right at daylight and right at dusk. And that's when their prime feeding times are, just like the wild deer. That doesn't mean they never ate during the middle of the day, and they probably ate some on and off throughout the night. But this ridiculous idea that these deer have some type of magical desire to stand up and eat every 3 or 4 hours is total nonsense. I'm just telling you, it don't happen. I'll argue with it with anybody. I don't know who came up with that, but it is not true whatsoever. And then the amount of food you're talking about, even in the time of the year, which is we're getting into it right now, and in September is when the bucks really, really put away the groceries. Even in September, there is no buck putting away 20 pounds of feed a day. And in fact, probably not even half that. So yeah, your whole idea, wherever you heard it, totally false.
20 pounds of green forage is a lot. I mean, that's a lot.
Oh yeah.
Hey, to get you even more fired up, I bet if you did a survey for the people who say that are also the people that want to put food inside of their switchgrass fields so the deer can just stand up, eat, and then lay back down 8 times a day and get their 20 pounds.
Hey, you know what? You got me. Now you're getting me on a roll. I've had in recent, probably in the last 30 days, several people, not my consulting clients, people that are considering hiring a consultant, call and tell me, I'm talking probably 4 or 5 people in just the last 30 days, talk about what nonsense it is to have these diversity pockets within their switchgrass. Oh, I listened to so and so because he's got so many YouTube videos and he keeps promoting this. And I went out and did it, and it just doesn't work. The deer don't care. You can't burn your switchgrass because you burn it up. Blah blah blah. Yeah, nonsense. Total garbage.
You got Austin laughing on this. He's off screen over here just rolling.
If Austin has any questions of his own, tell him to fire away. We'll answer them.
Yeah, he just won't get on camera. He might ask a question, but he won't get on camera. All right, here's number 4.
The next one comes from Shaden Doherty from Mount Storm, West Virginia. He says, Don and Terry, do you think there is a ceiling on the potential size and or score of bucks based on the state they are in? Living in West Virginia, the record book shows that the state record is 191 2/8 inches. I suppose my curiosity in this question stems from the idea that it may not be possible to chase 200 in my state, even if someone were to have the best habitat and conditions. What's your thoughts on this, and do you believe that there is a way to shorten the gap individually, or would state laws and regulations along with agricultural growth be the only way to cross that line into seeing 200-inch bucks? Thanks for using your platform to shine light on those who may have never had the chance to know God, and I pray he continues to bless you, this podcast, and everyone who tunes in. Well, Shaden, I don't think. Well, first of all, there's three ingredients to growing giant bucks. It's age, nutrition, and genetics. I think the limiting factor most of the time is age. I think just about any state could turn out booners if the bucks were allowed to get the age on them. The second contributing factor, as you mentioned, is food, and food is basically a direct reflection of the soil it's grown in. So you can consider the soil in your state, and if you've got fertile areas of fertile soils, you should be able to grow some good bucks there if they have the age. And then the last one is genetics. Well, genetics is something that we can't do much about. It is what it is. I'm not sure, and I think back to some of Dr. Strickland's research. I don't think it's genetics that's limiting in the most cases, because he talked about moving those deer from different regions, and once a couple of generations of those deer were on a good healthy diet, they were growing racks just as big as bucks from the other regions. So I don't think it's genetics most of the time. I think it's age and nutrition, and sometimes that's a reflection of the regulations. A DNR or a game agency places that, I think our next question, we're going to even get into that a little further, but definitely regulations can have an impact on the size of bucks in a state.
Isn't there a couple counties somewhere in West Virginia that's bow only that produces giants every single year? Like in the southwest corner of West Virginia, that's bow only?
Yeah, I'm thinking so.
So if that theory is what you just said would apply to that, you take the firearm season out of a couple counties, why is all of a sudden the same area, the same state, in the same counties able to produce these giant bucks? And it's because of age. It's all age structure, because you don't have, a bunch of bucks shot with a rifle when they're 2 and 3 years old running around being stupid.
Right.
And if I'm wrong about that, those counties in West Virginia, I'm just speaking off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that there's some counties somewhere, and it might be in Southwest West Virginia, like down by Kentucky and Tennessee, that are bow only. And I mean, people have talked about it for years. They just produce some absolute giants.
Yep.
All right. Let's see here. We need to go to that one.
Okay, the next one comes from Josh Heim from Dexter, Kansas. He says, Don and Terry, thank you for such an impactful podcast. I appreciate your wisdom and the example you share in your faith each week. My question is regarding deer regulations as it affects the impact on a state. My home state of Kansas is very soon voting on a bill that will greatly affect our deer herd, mature bucks. From what I understand, the bill, HB 2079, will allow residents to purchase a second buck tag, as well as extend the rifle season an extra 7 days into the rut. This will no doubt ruin in 5 to 10 years what has made Kansas one of the top producing mature buck states. I know your frustrations in Illinois deer regulations and how it has impacted your state. I was curious, if you had complete control of all deer regulations in a state, what would you allow? From seasons to weapons to tags, baiting, cell cams, etc. Curious to what you both would do and why you would do so. Thanks and God bless. Well, Josh, first of all, I want to shed a little light on what's going on in Kansas. I think this is tied directly with the fact that Kansas is trying to eliminate any baiting or supplemental feeding. This is all basically under the political disease of CWD and the supposed control of CWD. These states do not want older age class bucks, especially. The older bucks are the ones that are more likely to test positive for CWD for whatever reason. And these states want to keep their deer herds young. They don't want those older animals. And it's absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. In fact, the folks that want to promote these ideas, it's really they're just about all tied somehow to the government or to some learning institution, some college or university. um, I have yet, and I'm open-minded about this whole disease. I am not an expert on CWD. Somebody presents me some good, solid evidence to back up their management decisions and why they're doing some of the things, I will 100% get on board. But I just see it as politics has become entwined in the management of our deer herd. And, you know, when the federal government starts throwing money at these states to, you know, enact a CWD program of some sort, it's just, I mean, they're dealing with it in North Dakota, I believe. Got a friend out there. I won't mention his name because I don't want to get him in trouble with anybody, any legislators or anything. But got a good friend out there that's dealing with this. Kentucky, your home state of Kentucky, Terry. I mean, what Kentucky did is just totally absolute ridiculous. It makes no sense whatsoever. My home state of Illinois, their management plan for CWD, I've been over it 100 times. It's just total stupidity. It's all politics is what it is. It's 100% politics. It's no different than COVID. So, you know, if we would have listened to the government back in 2020 when COVID hit and what they was telling us was accurate, the population of the United States today would be about half what it is because half the people would have died of COVID. And yet I don't know a single person who did not get a COVID vaccine who regrets it. I didn't get it and I never will, but it's just absolute nonsense. And you know, you take the vaccine and then they tell you need a booster, you need another booster. You got 19 boosters and you still get COVID. And the majority of people get over it. Now, I'm not saying COVID didn't kill anybody because it certainly did. And, you know, my condolences to any listener who lost a loved one to COVID. But let's make no mistake, the whole threat of COVID was blown 100% out of proportion. It was all political. The reason COVID was released on the people of the United States was political. And CWD is the same way. It's a political disease that's not near as bad as what they want us to believe. So you asked what my regulations would be if I was in charge of a state, and boy, do I ever wish I was, because I'm telling you what, I could take any state in the Midwest, and in 5 years, it would be the best state in the whole country. And what I did as I thought about your question, preparing for this podcast, I thought about all the states and that I'm familiar with, and the regulations in those states, and I thought which state has the best regulations today. And I know a lot of people are probably expecting me to say Iowa because, you know, Iowa cranks out those giants, but it's not Iowa at all. You know, Iowa's letting some residents shoot $3. That is totally ridiculous. The state that I think today has the best regulations is Ohio. And if I was in charge of the state of Ohio, I would do just a couple of things. First of all, I would eliminate any baiting or feeding during hunting season. I would allow supplemental feeding outside of season, which they do, but during season, that would be totally eliminated.
So you're saying cut it off like 30 days before hunting season or something like that, like what other states like Iowa or others do.
Right. And then allow people to start feeding like 7 days after season ends. Then you can start supplemental feeding. That alone, that one regulation change alone would make Ohio the #1 state, hands down, not even a close second. Because they've got a $1 limit. They've got their gun season timed right. Yeah.
Late gun season. No high-powered rifle.
That one regulation is all Ohio needs.
Yep. And probably the next one you would probably do is probably put a crossbow season instead of being archery friendly the whole year.
Yep.
You know, I think you could even to throw another nugget out, I think you could even open archery season up even before October 1st. I think you could go to, like, Kansas and Kentucky, do early archery. I don't think that hurts you. I think
Nope.
that's fine. There's some advantages to hunting bucks in September because they're still in their bachelor group on that feeding pattern. That's
Yep.
how a lot of us are hunting in early September. But the feeding, you just getting too many young bucks shot by being able to hunt over bait piles.
Yeah, there's a couple other things I would do in Ohio that would not have near the impact as the first thing, eliminating those bait piles during season. The other thing I would do is their season goes too long into February. I think those deer at that time of the year, a lot of bucks are shedding, they're stressed, they're concentrated on food sources. I would end the season about January 15th, but I would tack those lost days onto the beginning, and I would probably open season about Labor Day weekend. I think Labor Day weekend would be ideal. And then I would get the crossbow out of archery. If you did those things, those three things, eliminate bait piles, take the last 2 weeks of season and tack it on to the beginning and start on Labor Day weekend, and then eliminate the crossbow during archery season. Ohio is hands down, they blow everybody away. Everybody.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot with one other thing to see if you do it. Would you limit non-resident hunters?
I do. I would. And the reason for it is for the people of Ohio, because if that's your home state and you're the one that, lives there, I think you deserve something more than someone that lives and pays taxes in another state. Because what would happen is the demand or the influx of non-residents would just surpass the basically the resource.
Yeah, it'd make it impossible to get permission property or a cheap lease. It would drive everything up. And, my feeling on it is, yes, I would find a way to limit it. I don't know that I would want to go to the extreme and expense of Iowa, how Iowa's become, because, it's once you get drawn, it's really, really expensive. So I wouldn't want to price someone out of it, but regulating it to where you didn't. I mean, if you got the number one spot, you want to maintain the number one spot and still be respectful of the people that are there, because it could turn into an outfitter haven. In a lot of places it already is, and nothing against outfitters, but it's going to make it a rich man's sport really quick.
That's exactly what would happen is the non-residents would come into Ohio and they would buy up land and just for deer hunting, and they'd price deer hunting out of the realm of most Ohio residents, where they couldn't find a place to hunt. I don't think it's fair that a resident of any state gets bought out by non-residents just because regulations have made it a good deer herd. So I'd want to be fair to the residents of whatever state it was.
Right. Well, I think that, we always spend so much time talking about crossbow season or bait piles or supplemental feeding or when gun season is. I just think that's as much of a vital piece as anything to protect the people that are there. It's their home, their family farms. And if we were going to be running a show somewhere, I think that would be an important piece to it.
No doubt about it. And again, I said this in a podcast a week or two ago. I'm not anti-crossbow. I think if someone has physical, liabilities, and they can't shoot a regular bow, then by all means, I do believe they should be able to. The day may come where I can no longer shoot my bow, and when it does, I will more than likely grab a crossbow and finish out my hunting career. So I don't want anybody to think I'm anti-crossbow. I am anti-crossbow for healthy individuals in archery season. If they're a healthy individual and they're a crossbow fanatic, good. Use it during the gun season.
Yeah, and just make a separate other weekend, like a muzzleloader weekend. I mean, You just got to limit it a little bit. Just all year is a little bit too much. Right. All right, so I think we got one more to go here.
This one comes from Junior Yoder from Dundee, Ohio. He says, "Dear Don and Terry, thanks for the great podcast. Always a highlight to my week. Don, if you had the chance and the time and with your plan to buy a farm in Michigan with the same amount of acreage as Tony LaPratt has, and that farm to come right against Tony's farm, do you think you could hold the same number of deer that Tony does, with him having buck rooms and you having so-called hotels? Would love to hear from this. Well, first of all, total respect for Tony LaPratt. Consider him a friend. Nothing I'm going to say is meant in a derogatory way towards Tony. But if I had a farm next to him, I believe that I would have as many deer as he has, but I believe I would have more mature bucks. I just think there's too much human intrusion. And I'm just guessing on what's going on his farm based on, listening to him talk and hearing other people talk about his plans and such. I don't know 100% for certain, but I promise you, I would have as many or probably more mature bucks on my property than he does. So I'll leave it at that. And deer numbers, we're probably going to have about the same, because I think he's only got a 40-acre farm, if I remember, or 60 or something like that. It's going to be hard. If I had 60 next to his 60, it would be very difficult for either one of us to, own the deer herd. There's going to be a lot of back and forth deer traffic. So that's my spiel.
That question Junior asked was meant to fire you up. We know that that came from there. You still answered it, but what people didn't realize is that wasn't the question that got you fired up in this episode. That was the amazing part. I figured the last one would have gotten you, but
I will say this. There is a fairly strong likelihood. I'm going to say just a little bit better than 50-50 at the moment, that I could be heavily involved in an Ohio hunting property. And if I do, it's going to be very, very, very interesting story. Let's just put it that way. The location of the farm, the size of the farm, just a lot of different factors. If it happens, and there's a fair chance, I mean, I was contacted about being involved in this situation. If it happens, I'm telling you what, it's going to be a story. It's going to be a real good story.
We'll make sure we have our Rumble account started before that happens so we can document it on the conservative platform. How about that?
Well, there won't be too much politics involved, but for the hunting industry, it'll be real interesting.
Yeah.
I hope it does come together, but who knows at this point.
Yeah. A lot of pieces got to fall into place. But again, thank you for everybody's support. Again, I apologize if the audio or video is a little bad this week. I'm getting the best Wi-Fi I can down here in Destin, Florida. We're traveling back this week. And again, thank you for also the support of the Chasing Giants TV new YouTube channel. Go buy your Pro Staff t-shirt and help us raise some money for Lester's feet. That's the ultimate goal of most of everything we're doing here. And start thinking about these questions of buck management. We're going to be talking about putting a hit list together of what we need to shoot, what we want to shoot and target list. And let's get some good questions going for Don here in a couple weeks when he gets his inventory and starts making some of these decisions for his property.
Yeah, we might mention we're going to have Joe Miles on here in the coming weeks. So if you got questions for Joe, send them in, and you get Joe and Terry and I all to answer.
Yeah, I think Joe is on next week, so we'll probably do that buck management sometime, I would guess middle of August is what I was thinking on that.
Yep, sounds good.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for the support. We really appreciate it.
God bless everyone. Have a great week.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Via Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.